For 9 long months, Rachel Carter carried a child in silence, terrified that the man she loved, her billionaire boss, Ethan Walker, would see her baby not as a blessing, but as a mistake. Imagine hiding your pregnancy every single day at Walker Global in New York, fearing your secret would destroy everything. Until one night, the truth exploded in the most heartbreaking way. 9 months, a woman hiding a life growing inside her. Every morning, walking into the glittering offices of Walker Global, Rachel swallowed her tears and forced a professional smile. No one knew. No one suspected. She feared the cold, piercing eyes of Ethan Walker. She feared that in his empire of wealth and control, a child would never be seen as a gift, only as a burden, an unforgivable mistake. Yet, in her heart, this baby was love, blood, and life itself. And then the night came. In the middle of New York, the scream of ambulance sirens tore through the darkness. Her secret could not be hidden any longer. Everything was about to shatter in pain and tears. If it were you, would you have the strength to hide 9 months of your life the way Rachel did? Stay with me as we follow this heartbreaking journey. The office of Walker Global was cold, sleek, and unforgiving. Rachel Carter sat at her desk, her black blazer chosen 2 sizes larger. The fabric hid the curve of her stomach, but not the pounding of her heart. Each morning, she walked into this glass empire carrying a secret no one could see. Every click of Ethan Walker's polished leather shoes across the marble floor made her stiffen. She lowered her eyes to the screen, pretending to type. Yet her hand drifted instinctively toward her belly, where a small life moved quietly inside her. She told herself she was strong. She told herself she could last until the end. But fear lingered like a shadow. If Ethan discovered the truth, she could lose everything. Her career, her dignity, the man she loved from a distance. There were moments when she thought he might already know. His gaze lingered longer, his questions cut sharper, and yet, every day she forced the same calm smile, the same professional tone, as if her heart was not breaking with every step. Love and fear twisted together inside her, because Ethan Walker was not only her boss, he was the father of her child. That morning, Ethan stopped. His tall frame filled the corridor as his steel-gray eyes locked onto her. For one dreadful second, Rachel forgot to breathe. "You look different today," he said, his voice low but sharp. Her throat went dry. She forced a quick smile. "New blazer, sir." The words came out steady, but her pulse raced in her ears. The blazer was not new. It was months old, bought to hide her changing body. Ethan's gaze lingered, heavy, searching. It felt as though he could see past the fabric, past the mask she had worn for weeks. Rachel's fingers tightened around her tablet. Her body stiffened, waiting for the blow, the question she feared most. But he only nodded and moved toward his office. The silence he left behind was louder than any accusation. Rachel exhaled shakily, pressing a hand against her desk for support. She told herself she had survived another close call, yet she could still feel the weight of his eyes pressing into her chest. Every second in his presence was a battle, a war between secrecy and exposure, between fear and longing, and the truth trembled dangerously close to breaking free. Her mind drifted back to the night everything changed. A thunderstorm over Chicago, a flight delayed for hours, 2 colleagues stranded together in a hotel lobby that hummed with nervous travelers and the sound of rain against glass. Rachel remembered the bar, 1 glass of wine, then another. Ethan beside her, less guarded than she had ever seen him, his laughter softened by fatigue, his hand brushing hers on the table. She had tried to ignore the pull, but the storm outside seemed to tear down walls inside as well. When the elevator doors closed, silence grew thick. His fingers found hers, strong, certain, as lightning split the sky. That night blurred into heat, whispers, and the breaking of boundaries she had sworn never to cross. By morning, the line between them was drawn again. Ethan wore his armor of control, his voice brisk, professional, but Rachel carried more than memory. Weeks later, she carried proof of that night inside her. Now, months later, every heartbeat in her womb reminded her of Chicago, of one night that gave her love, fear, and a secret that could destroy her life if spoken aloud. Rachel's hand slid to her belly, feeling the faint kick beneath her palm. It was a private signal, a reminder that secrets could not last forever. The child was growing stronger, and so was the danger. She shifted in her chair, hoping no one had noticed the gesture. But when she looked up, Ethan was watching from across the office glass wall. His eyes were sharp, unreadable, and they froze her in place. Her breath caught. Did he know? Could he see through the careful clothes, the tired excuses, the lunches spent away from the office? Every movement felt exposed, every glance a threat. She tore her eyes away, pretending to study the glowing screen, yet her heart thundered with panic. The more she tried to hide, the more her body betrayed her. The curve of her stomach, the way her hand always drifted protectively, the changes no fabric could forever disguise. Ethan's stare lingered a moment longer, then shifted back to his papers. Relief washed over her, but it was thin and trembling. She knew the truth was chasing her, and one day soon, Ethan Walker would see everything she had fought to hide. Rachel remembered Ethan's words, spoken years ago over coffee, his voice calm but merciless. Family, children, they are nothing but a burden. They hold you back from what really matters. The words had cut her even then, though she never showed it. Now, carrying his child, they pierced deeper. Every time she thought about telling him, those words echoed louder. Burden, distraction, mistake. She could see his face, the dismissive glance, the disdain that would follow. To reveal the truth felt like betraying him, as if she had trapped him in a life he never wanted. So she chose silence. Silence was safer. She carried the weight alone, hiding in plain sight, building her days around secrecy and lies. She told herself she was protecting him, protecting his empire, his reputation, his legacy. But the lie gnawed at her. In quiet moments, when her baby kicked, she felt torn apart. Love for Ethan, fear of his rejection, and a desperate need to shield the child from his cold indifference. Her heart ached with injustice. Because for Rachel, this baby was everything. But for Ethan, she feared it would be nothing more than a shadow chained to his success. The pain struck without warning. A sharp, twisting contraction that made Rachel grip the edge of her desk. Her breath caught, and for a moment she could not move. The office around her hummed with phones and footsteps, but inside her body a storm was building. She told herself it was nothing, just strain, just fatigue. But another wave came, stronger, forcing her to bend forward, sweat breaking across her brow. Her carefully planned future began to collapse. She had promised herself she would last until the due date, slip quietly away, start fresh in another city, but her child had different plans. Rachel clenched her jaw, whispering under her breath, "Not yet. Please, not yet." She needed time. Time to write her resignation. Time to disappear before Ethan could see her, but time was no longer hers to command. The contractions came, steady and merciless. Her hands trembled as she gathered her things, fighting panic. She had lived in silence for nearly 9 months. Now, silence was breaking from inside her. The baby was coming early, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Rachel stumbled into Monica Davis's apartment that evening, her face pale, her hands pressed to her stomach. Monica rushed forward, steadying her onto the worn leather couch. "Those are not practice pains," Monica said firmly, her eyes sharp with concern. "You need a hospital." Rachel shook her head, tears welling. "I can't. Not yet. The Hudson Project is in 3 days. Ethan needs to know he's about to be a father." Monica cut in, her voice softer but unyielding. Rachel's tears spilled. "He'll see it as a scandal, as a trap. I'll ruin everything he built." Monica knelt beside her, squeezing her hand. "You've carried this alone long enough. You think you're protecting him. But what about yourself? What about your baby?" Rachel turned toward the window, city lights blurring through her tears. She could not forget Ethan's words, the disgust in his voice when anyone mentioned children. If he hated the idea of someone else's family in his company, how could he accept his own? The pain gripped her again, sharper this time. Monica's face grew grave. "Rachel, this secret is killing you. You cannot run from it forever." That night, Rachel pulled a small suitcase from Monica's closet, each item folded carefully, each paper arranged with trembling hands. The resignation letter lay on top, unsigned, but ready. Her train ticket to Boston was hidden in her purse. She told herself she could do it. She could vanish. She could build a new life in another city, away from Ethan's gaze, away from his judgment. She would raise her child alone, shield him from a father's indifference, and spare herself the pain of rejection. Monica watched silently, worry in her eyes. "Are you sure this is what you want?" Rachel forced a nod. "It's the only way." Inside, her chest burned with conflict. She longed for Ethan's embrace, his protection, the chance that he might change. But the risk was too great. One wrong word from him could crush her completely. She zipped the suitcase and straightened her shoulders. Courage felt thin, but it was all she had. She whispered to her unborn child, "I will protect you, even if it means leaving everything behind." The plan was fragile, the future uncertain, but Rachel believed it was the only escape left to her. The Uber moved too quickly through the crowded streets of New York. Rachel clutched her belly, fighting the sharp rhythm of contractions. Beside her, Monica held her hand, urging her to breathe. The city blurred outside, lights and shadows racing past. She reached for her phone, Ethan's number glowing on the screen. Her thumb hovered, torn between fear and desperation. She had almost pressed call when the driver swerved. The screech of brakes split the night. A horn blared. Then the crash came, metal slamming metal, the shattering of glass. Rachel's body jerked forward, pain ripping through her abdomen. Her phone flew from her hand, clattering to the floor. The smell of smoke. Monica shouting her name. Warmth spreading down her legs. Blood. Rachel gasped, clutching her stomach. "The baby! Something's wrong." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Through the cracked window, strangers gathered, calling for help. Rachel's vision blurred, but one image burned clear, her phone screen glowing on the floorboard. Ethan Walker's name still shining back at her. Her secret was no longer hers, it was about to explode, and not in the way she had ever imagined. Ethan Walker was in his office, bent over figures for an investor meeting, when his private phone rang. He almost ignored it. Deadlines waited. Money never slept. But the caller ID froze him. New York Presbyterian Hospital. He answered, his voice clipped. "Walker? Mr. Walker?" a calm female voice said. "This is Dr. Chen from the emergency department. You're listed as the emergency contact for Rachel Carter." His pen slipped from his hand. "What happened?" "She was in a car accident. She's stable, but—" The doctor paused. "She's in active labor. The baby is premature." The room spun. Ethan gripped the desk as though it could steady him. Labor? His mind reeled through months of loose clothes, sudden absences, the strange distance in Rachel's eyes. The pieces locked together with brutal force. "Premature?" he repeated, his voice hoarse. "Yes, we need you here immediately." Ethan ended the call without reply. The silence in his office was deafening. For the first time in years, the numbers on his desk meant nothing. His empire felt hollow. All that mattered now was Rachel, and the child he never knew existed until this very moment. Ethan tore through Manhattan, the city lights blurring as he pushed his car harder than he ever had before. Contracts, investors, entire fortunes had once bent to his command. Tonight, none of it mattered. All he could see was Rachel, her face pale, her body broken, a child fighting to enter the world too soon. His chest tightened until breathing hurt. He ignored red lights. He ignored horns blaring behind him. He was a man possessed, no longer the polished CEO who walked marble halls with calculated grace. He was simply a man racing against time, terrified of being too late. Each block dragged memories he had tried to bury. Rachel's laughter in Chicago, her quiet loyalty over 4 long years, the way her hand trembled this morning when she handed him papers. Signs he had seen, but refused to understand. Now, truth slammed into him with every heartbeat. She had been carrying his child. Alone. And if he failed to reach her in time, he might lose both of them. He gripped the wheel, eyes fixed on the road. For the first time, Ethan Walker prayed. Not for profit, not for victory, but for life. The hospital corridors reeked of antiseptic and panic. Nurses rushed, machines beeped, voices shouted instructions, and in the middle of it all, Rachel lay on the bed, drenched in sweat, her face twisted with pain. Ethan entered, his presence towering, his emotions colliding. Rage, fear, heartbreak. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, his voice cracking. Rachel's eyes opened, glazed with tears. She gasped, unable to answer, another contraction tearing through her body. For 1 second, Ethan burned with betrayal. But then he saw her hand, trembling in the air, reaching for something, reaching for him. Without thought, he stepped forward, his hand closing around hers. Her grip was fierce, desperate. He bent close, voice lower, steadier. "We'll talk later. Right now. Just breathe. Focus." Her eyes searched his, terror reflected back at him. Ethan felt his fury dissolve into something raw, a primal need to protect. The monitors screamed. Doctors gave orders. Rachel cried out again, her nails digging into his skin, and Ethan held on as if his grip alone could anchor her to this world. For the first time, his power meant nothing. Only his presence mattered, and he refused to let go. The room shifted from chaos to silence in a single instant. A sharp cry pierced the air, fragile yet fierce, cutting through every heartbeat. Rachel collapsed back onto the bed, her chest heaving. The doctor lifted a tiny boy, wrapped quickly in a blanket. 6 pounds, strong lungs, she said. But her voice was distant to Ethan. His world had narrowed to that single cry. When the nurse turned and placed the baby into his arms, Ethan froze. The weight was so small, yet it crushed him with its enormity. Dark eyes blinked open, unfocused, but alive. His son. The man who had sworn never to be a father felt tears burn his eyes. He had built towers of glass and steel, commanded boardrooms, crushed rivals. But nothing had ever undone him like this tiny life pressing against his chest. Rachel watched through heavy eyelids, whispering weakly, "He's beautiful." Ethan lowered his head, the baby's soft cry fading into steady breaths. His jaw trembled. For the first time since childhood, he let himself break. A billionaire, undone not by loss, not by money, but by the first cry of his child. Rachel's lips moved, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I was afraid you'd hate him and hate me." Her words pierced deeper than any boardroom betrayal. Ethan looked at her, pale and exhausted, her hair damp against her forehead. She had carried his child in silence, borne the weight of fear, all while standing beside him day after day. His jaw tightened. Anger rose, but not at her, at himself, at the blindness that had kept him from seeing what she endured. He leaned closer, his voice firm but gentle. "We'll talk later. Rest now. He needs you strong." She tried to smile, but her strength failed. Her eyes fluttered shut, exhaustion pulling her under. Ethan turned to the nurse, his gaze sharp, protective. "Watch her. Don't leave her side." The baby stirred in his arms, tiny fingers curling around his thumb. Ethan looked down, his chest aching with something unfamiliar. He had always believed love was weakness, but holding this fragile life, seeing Rachel's sacrifice, he felt something far stronger. For the first time, Ethan Walker understood what it meant to be needed. The NICU was quiet, filled with soft beeping monitors and hushed voices. Ethan sat beside the glass incubator, his suit jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled up. His son lay inside, tiny chest rising and falling with effort. Ethan reached through the opening, his finger brushing against a hand no bigger than a coin. The baby's fingers curled instinctively around his, holding on with surprising strength. Ethan swallowed hard. He bent closer, his voice low, trembling. "I won't leave you. Not like he did to me. Not ever." He stayed like that for hours, unmoving, letting the small hand grip his finger. Outside the window, New York pulsed with wealth and ambition. Inside this room, none of it mattered. Every contract, every skyscraper, every deal seemed weightless compared to 6 fragile pounds of life. In that moment, Ethan Walker, the billionaire, the untouchable CEO, was stripped away. What remained was a man who had found his reason to fight. The vow was silent, but it was absolute. He would not abandon this child. He would not repeat the mistakes carved into his past. His son would never know the emptiness he had once known. When Ethan finally left the NICU, Monica was waiting in the corridor. Her arms were crossed, her expression sharp with anger and pain. "You know why she didn't tell you, don't you?" Monica's voice was steady. Ethan's jaw tightened. "She lied to me." "She was terrified," Monica shot back. "Terrified because of you, because you once said family was nothing but a burden. She heard you. She carried those words every day while carrying your child." Ethan froze. The truth struck harder than any accusation. He had believed those words harmless, tossed out in a conversation years ago, but they had built a prison around Rachel, one she could not escape. "She faced this alone," Monica continued. "Doctor visits, fear, sleepless nights, and you, blind, cold, wrapped up in your empire. You didn't even see her slipping away." For the first time in years, Ethan had no defense. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Monica's voice softened, but her eyes did not waver. "She didn't betray you, Ethan. She protected herself, and your son. You need to ask yourself if you deserve either of them." Ethan looked away, unable to answer, but the seed of shame had been planted. Later that night, Ethan returned to the NICU. His son stirred in the incubator, fists waving weakly. Ethan reached in again, his finger caught instantly in that tiny grip. He whispered, almost to himself, "I don't know how to do this, but I will learn. I won't walk away, not like my father, not like the man I swore I'd never become." The baby's grip tightened as though answering. A tear slipped down Ethan's cheek before he could stop it. He sat there, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the fragile life before him. For years he had believed control was strength, that emotion was weakness. But here, in the steady beeping of monitors, he felt something stronger than control, a promise, a calling. He bowed his head, voice shaking. "I want to be your father, a real one. I will not fail you." For the first time, hope stirred in him, raw and unfamiliar. It did not erase his anger at Rachel. It did not erase the lies, but it gave him purpose. Ethan Walker had built an empire, but tonight he began building something far greater, the courage to be a father. 3 days later, Rachel returned to Ethan's penthouse. She expected cold marble, empty rooms, the impersonal perfection of wealth. Instead, she stepped into warmth. A crib stood in the master bedroom, its wooden frame polished, draped in soft blankets. A rocking chair waited near the window. Bottles and tiny clothes lined the counters. The sleek space had been reshaped into a home. Rachel stopped in shock, her hospital bag slipping from her hand. "You did all this?" Ethan nodded, his voice calm. "I had help, Ed. But yes, this is your home now. His home." Her throat tightened. For so long she had feared being nothing more than a secret. Now she stood in a place that whispered belonging. Ethan watched her carefully, his usual armor softened. "I can rebuild towers and contracts 1,000 times, but this is what matters now." For the first time, Rachel saw love outweigh ambition in his eyes. Not spoken yet, not promised, but alive. The penthouse no longer gleamed as a monument to success. It had become something rarer, a fragile beginning of family. And for Rachel, it was both terrifying and beautiful. The peace did not last. At Walker Global, whispers spread like wildfire. Rachel had been promoted to a higher position, her name now tied to major projects. But behind closed doors, employees murmured, "Sleeping with the boss." From assistant to executive overnight. Convenient timing, isn't it? The gossip burned through hallways, leaked into industry press. Competitors snickered, investors frowned. To them, she was not a woman who had endured months of fear and sacrifice. She was a scandal. Rachel felt the weight of every glance. Meetings grew colder. Invitations disappeared. Her achievements were dismissed, her reputation slashed by innuendo. Ethan heard the rumors, his face darkening, his voice sharp in boardrooms. He defended her publicly, but the damage spread. The narrative was already written. CEO rewards his mistress. At night, Rachel held her son, her heart aching. She had fought so hard to protect him from shame. Yet here it was, raining down on both of them. Ethan stood by her, but she felt the cracks forming. Money could not silence every whisper. Power could not erase every headline. The empire they both served was now turning against them. The tension in the office was already unbearable when Liam Whitmore arrived. Slick suit, easy smile, eyes sharp with calculation. He carried himself like a man smelling blood in the water. "Rachel," he said warmly, too warmly, as if Ethan were not standing a few feet away. "Boston is still waiting for you. We both know you deserve better than whispers behind your back." Ethan's gaze hardened, but Liam pressed on, his tone dripping with mockery. "From assistant to mother of the CEO's child. Impressive climb. Not many could manage that." Rachel's cheeks burned. She opened her mouth, but Ethan stepped forward, voice like ice. "Leave." Liam smirked. "Or what? You'll threaten me in front of your board? The whole city is already talking, Ethan. You can't silence everyone." Rachel felt torn in two, humiliation pressing her down, anger boiling under her skin. Ethan's fists clenched, his control slipping. For the first time, the billionaire's mask cracked in public. Whitmore leaned close to Rachel, his words a whisper meant to cut. "Think carefully. How long until he sees you as nothing more than another liability?" The words struck deep, igniting flames that would not be easily contained. That night, Rachel's tears spilled freely. The confrontation had ripped open wounds she had tried to hide. She stood in Ethan's penthouse, voice shaking. "You don't love me. You just want to control me, like I'm one of your assets." Ethan froze, the accusation hitting harder than any rival's insult. His jaw tightened. "Is that truly what you think of me?" Rachel's sob caught in her throat. "What else am I supposed to think? Everything in your world is a deal, a calculation. Even me. Even our son." Ethan stepped closer, but she backed away, shaking her head. "I carried him alone because I thought you'd resent us both. And now, when I see how you look at me, like you're trying to solve a problem, I wonder if I was right." His chest heaved. "Rachel, The words faltered. For once, the man of speeches and contracts could not find a language to defend himself. They stood apart, the distance between them heavier than walls. Love was there, raw and aching, but so was doubt, gnawing and merciless. For the first time it felt as though their fragile bond might snap beyond repair. Morning brought no peace. News outlets splashed headlines across every screen. Walker Empire, shaken, secret child with former assistant. Photos of Rachel leaving the hospital. Speculation about promotions. Questions about ethics and power. The company reeled. Investors demanded answers. The board convened an emergency session. Cameras camped outside the headquarters. Every whisper became a roar. Rachel sat at her desk, her body rigid under the weight of flashing lights outside the glass tower. Every click of a camera lens felt like another judgment. Ethan entered, his expression carved from steel, but when he looked at her, his eyes softened. He extended his hand. "We face this together." She hesitated, fear clawing at her, but then she placed her trembling hand in his. His grip was steady, warm, unyielding. The hallway outside buzzed with reporters, voices like waves crashing. Ethan drew her close, guiding her forward. For years he had faced markets, crises, billion-dollar risks, but never this. Never the storm of his private life laid bare before the world. Yet in that moment he chose not to shield himself. He chose to stand with Rachel side by side against the fire. The conference room brimmed with tension. Board members on one side, reporters on the other. Flashbulbs lit the space as questions flew. "Mr. Walker, did you promote her because of your relationship? Was this child planned or a scandal? Are company funds involved?" Ethan raised a hand, the room falling quiet under his command. His voice carried, firm and clear. "This child is mine, my son, and Rachel Carter is his mother." A murmur swept the room, cameras clicking furiously. Ethan pressed on. "Her position at this company is earned. She has served with loyalty and brilliance for years. Her promotion reflects her talent, not her relationship with me." The reporters fell into stunned silence. For once, the CEO, who always spoke of profit and growth, spoke instead of truth and responsibility. Rachel's chest tightened as she listened. Every word was a shield, thrown over her in front of the world. When Ethan finished, the room was hushed. Not convinced, not forgiving, but shaken. His declaration had shifted the air. He had risked reputation built over decades, for her, for their child, and that risk echoed louder than any denial. For a moment, the silence pressed down. Then Rachel stood, legs unsteady but heart resolved. Reporters turned, cameras flashing. She clutched the microphone, her voice trembling. "I hid the truth," she admitted, each word slow, heavy. "Not because of ambition, not because of calculation, but because I was afraid." Gasps rippled across the room. She pressed on, eyes brimming with tears. "I was afraid of losing my job, afraid of destroying the company, afraid of what Ethan would say if he knew I was carrying his child." Her voice cracked, but she did not stop. "But most of all, I was afraid. Because I loved him, and I didn't know if love would be enough." The room froze. Even the clicking cameras stilled. Ethan stared at her, struck silent. For a man who lived by control, by knowing every move, her confession shattered him. Rachel lowered the microphone, tears streaking her cheeks. The truth was no longer a secret. It was raw, naked, standing before the world. And in that moment, everything, reputation, fear, ambition, faded before a single truth. She loved him, and she had always loved him. The silence in the press hall was suffocating. Rachel's confession still hung in the air when Ethan stepped forward. Cameras flashed, reporters leaning closer. He looked at her, not at the microphones, not at the board, but at Rachel. His voice carried steady and unshakable. "You think you were alone in this. You weren't. I loved you then. I love you now. From Chicago. Through every silent day, through every moment you feared me, I loved you." Gasps swept the room. Rachel's knees weakened, tears rising again, but this time they were different. Ethan's walls crumbled in front of the world. I was blind, stubborn, and afraid. But no more. Whatever they call us, whatever they say about me, I want you to know one truth. I love you. I love our son, and nothing will take that from me." Reporters erupted, flashes exploding like lightning, yet Rachel heard none of it. She heard only him, and for the first time the walls between them cracked open, letting light flood through. Hours later, the boardroom was quiet but tense. Ethan and Rachel sat side by side, hands brushing lightly beneath the table. The chairwoman cleared her throat. "Walker Global cannot ignore what has happened. The press storm is real. Investors are uneasy, but—" She paused, her gaze softer. "We recognize both of you, and we will not tear your family apart." Rachel held her breath. "The conditions are clear," the chairwoman continued. "Professional boundaries must remain. Separate reporting lines, full disclosure of any personal developments, and above all, transparency with the board." Ethan nodded once, jaw set. "Agreed." Rachel exhaled, her shoulders loosening. For months she had lived under the shadow of fear. Now, at least, there was a fragile acceptance. It was not a perfect victory, but it was a door left open. For the first time, the empire Ethan had built did not crush them. Instead, it made space for something new, the possibility of family. The meeting ended. And as they walked out together, Ethan's hand found Rachel's, steady, certain. A storm rolled over Manhattan, thunder rattling the windows of the penthouse, rain lashed against glass, lightning flashing across the skyline. Inside, there was only peace. Rachel sat near the window, Oliver cradled in her arms, his soft breaths steady against her chest. Ethan entered quietly, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled, exhaustion softened by a rare smile. He reached for his son, lifting him gently. Oliver's tiny hand grasped his collar. Ethan kissed his forehead and whispered, "Real success isn't the towers or the contracts. It's this. You, us, family." Rachel's throat tightened. She leaned against him, the three of them framed by the glow of stormlight. The storm outside raged, wild and unforgiving. But inside, there was calm, a haven carved from love and survival. For Rachel, it felt like a promise. For Ethan, it felt like redemption. For Oliver, it was simply home. The storm had not yet passed when Ethan returned from the study. His steps were firm, his eyes clear. He held a small box in his hand. Rachel looked up, startled. "Ethan?" He opened the box. A ring glimmered as lightning struck outside, reflecting in his gray eyes. "Rachel Carter," he said, voice low but steady. "I have spent years running from what I feared. I swore never to be a husband, never to be a father, but you and Oliver changed everything." She gasped, tears pooling. He knelt, the most powerful man in the city, humbling himself before her. "Let me do what my father never could. Let me become the husband you deserve, the father our son deserves. Marry me." Rachel covered her mouth, trembling. The storm outside roared. Inside, silence. And then she whispered, "Yes." The word broke through the thunder, brighter than lightning, stronger than fear. Rachel held Oliver close, Ethan's arms wrapped around them both. The storm outside had faded, leaving only the soft hum of the city beyond the windows. Money, power, reputation, these had once defined Ethan's world. But standing here now, with Rachel leaning against him and their son nestled between them, he knew those things were fragile. They could rise, they could fall. They were never enough. Love was different. Love endured. Love gave life meaning. Rachel looked up, her smile gentle through tears. Ethan kissed her hair and whispered, "We're whole now." Oliver stirred in her arms, tiny fingers curling around both of them. A family, imperfect, scarred, but unbreakable. And so the truth remained. Success is not measured by towers of glass or empires of steel, but by the warmth of the people who wait for you at home. What would you choose? The fleeting weight of money and fame, or the embrace of those who love you? If this story touched you, share your thoughts with us. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next journey that speaks to the heart.